Well, I want to welcome you to the session. Our session today is Student, Family, and Community-Led Healing and Thriving Panel. My name is Elena Fernandez, and I will be serving as your moderator today, and will introduce you to our panel shortly. But I do want to apologize, take a moment to apologize to everyone on here because I am connecting via phone and not via my computer. Our system shut down, so I want to apologize for connecting via phone. But my name is Elena Fernandez, and I'm the Chief Program Officer at St. John's Community Health, also known as St. John's Well Child and Family Center. I oversee 11 programs that address social determinants of health that are integrated to reduce barriers to care. Due to the pandemic and across the nation and statewide, students, families, and communities have experienced an increased amount of stress, social isolation, economic hardships, loss of loved ones, resulting in an increased amount of stress, trauma, depression, and anxiety. The pandemic has also further exacerbated the inequities that were already present for decades, especially within our communities of colors who have historically experienced socioeconomic and health disparities. Fortunately, students, parents, community-based organizations, and childcare providers have played a critical leadership role in developing solutions and leading efforts to mitigate toxic stress and trauma so that healing occurs amongst children, students, families, and the communities we serve. We are really excited to hear from some of our panel members today, and I would like to introduce them. Liza Bray is a visionary, hands-on leader that is the Executive Director of Partners for Children South LA. She has nearly 30 years of nonprofit experience working with at-risk youth and families in South Los Angeles community, where she also grew up and still resides in this community. On our panel, we also have Alma Cervantes, who is the Regional Education Equity Director for Building Healthy Communities in Monterey County and has been there for the last 8 years. She has led the Education Equity Justice Action Team at the local, county, and state levels. On our panel, we also have Jessica Ramos, who's a former school board director of Oakland Unified School District and is a second-year student at UC Berkeley, studying social welfare with a double minor in public policy, early learning, and developmental science. We also have on our panel Kaur, who is the director of Just Plain Kids, an accredited childcare center in Palmdale, California. She began her teaching career 20 years ago and is passionate about studying early childhood best practices to support children in reaching their greatest potential. Please help me welcome Liza, Alma, Jessica, and Kamal. So I will be asking a few questions for our panelists, and I will begin now. And the first question to our panelists is as follows. And it's really regarding their motivation and journey to the work they're doing today. Can you share about your journey to support healing in your community? What role have you played and what has motivated you to get involved? What was it that called you to action? And I do want to begin with Jessica.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here today. I was a former student board member for Oakland Unified School District, and I was sworn in during the pandemic. And during that time, it was a lot. It was a lot. And one of the things that was really brought up was mental health. And as a student, as a senior during that year, I remember going through the stress myself, seeing my own parents struggle to be able to make ends meet financially and just physically, emotionally. And I saw how a lot of students were going through the same thing. One of the biggest things that did happen in our city was having a digital divide. And again, most students, they could not connect to education or health or their different resources because they did not have access to a technology device or to internet. And one of the things that as a city and as a student was I advocated for being able to have digital access for every student. And it was a conversation with multiple city officials and different coalitions and organizations across our city. Again, just because Oakland is in the Bay Area where most of our tech, services and most of our, we have Silicon Valley right across. So, just knowing that students didn't have access to technology was one of the biggest concerns, in addition with mental health and many other concerns. And as a student who had a voice, and I would say to be able to just bring it up to city officials, my voice, what I used it for was being able to have digital access. So we were able to raise up to $12 million to be able to close the digital divide, and now we have 96% of our students being able to connect to internet and a laptop for the free. But also not just doing that during the pandemic, but being able to have that stable for the next 5 years. And no matter who the next mayoral candidate is, no matter who is elected into office, we continue to have digital access and also expand the broadband across our city.
Jessica, that is amazing that your leadership as a student has been able to bring that to our community members. Like you, we also have Liza Bray. Liza, can you speak to your experience?
Absolutely. Good afternoon, everyone. As Elena mentioned earlier, I've been at this for a while, about 30 years. I was born and raised in South Los Angeles, and I do still reside in this community. And I've had the privilege of working in this community for that entire time. And my journey started back in 1992 when, following the civil unrest, I was moved to action. I was at that time really committed to being a vehicle for change. Having lived in South LA my entire life, I obviously understood firsthand the challenges that the residents faced, but the civil unrest really was an illustration for me of, quote unquote, the pot boiling over. And so it was me really seeing residents crying out for support, for that healing. And so my commitment was and still is to be able to support them and to provide the services that they needed. And so that is what brought me to my current role in running Partners for Children South LA, where we are providing an early childhood system of care where 41 partner organizations are all working together to coordinate services and case management support for some of our most vulnerable families in South LA.
Thank you, Liza and Jessica. This journey that you're sharing with us has definitely played a role in the healing our community. Here to share our experience as well around that is Alma Cervantes.
Thank you, Elena. This is Alma Cervantes. I was raised and born in Salinas, specifically in East Salinas, if you're familiar with the Central Coast and Monterey County. Salinas, where this beautiful city, but also has these challenges about the narrative of being a community where we used to be known for having a lot of violence around gang violence, but very rich about our culture and also infrastructure around ag, which a lot of our families work in the fields and agriculture are the providers for this economy, specifically for our county. But yeah, the challenges of investment in better quality life for everyone, especially for the most disenfranchised families, has been something historically rooted in our community. So my journey started in the education system itself, being impacted by the school to prison pipeline, for those that are familiar with that. complexity, basically our students being targeted for being Black and brown and coming from families of color. So I have a brother that ended in prison for 9 years and not understanding his trauma as a brown male. And me as a brown woman, being raised by a single mother of 9, also being left out of cultural relevant programs and understanding as an English learner. So even though my brother was in prison, I was still navigating a very complex education system. And that gave me a lot of my resilience, but also my process of healing from a system of oppression in my family that separated me for choosing higher education. But yet I use it as a tool also to integrate leadership and the importance of organizing for students and parents, intergenerational approach of them being in the tables of these co-designing solutions that address cultural healing and practices in schools.
Thank you so much, Alma. I can relate a lot with a lot of your work. I also grew up in LA in environments such as the one Jessica, Liza, and Alma have spoken to. So thank you for sharing your narrative. Kamal, can you speak to us as to what role have you played and what motivated you to get involved?
Yes. Obviously, I'm Kamal Kaur, and I actually immigrant. I immigrated to the United States in 1989. I came from a teacher's family. So, you know, public service was in my blood because all we hear at lunchtime, dinner time and breakfast time, how you can make a difference. It's always take one person to start how you can make a difference. But making these differences, education was a big thing. You got to go to school and learn because knowledge is power. So then I had, 4 years later, I have my son. So my son went to school, certain thing, I will volunteer in school. So certain thing in the school or in the classroom, I see as a volunteer, I was not agree with those, even though I had the degree to go and pursue their career at that time, but motherhood was on my top of the list. So once my second son born, I was, you know, they were, as they was growing up. So I want them to, you know, get the full experience of education. That time I'm learning a lot of things I know now that I have learned, such as, you know, I'm Indian girl. I have never that time consider myself, I was brown because I'm different. That's the color I got. God give me brown color. So I have the brown color, right? So it was not a big deal for me to have a different color, but I had to fight for every single thing. Fight means not I'm fighting with my world, but like my father taught me, you have the biggest power and that's your pen. You can write it down anything, you can dispute anything, but you have to be done all those things for a respectfully way. And that's the time my children went to school. So in the back of my head, I want them to learn, but at the same time, learn the value and value of things that I was taught. But then very soon I realized that I'm in a different world.
Yeah.
Adopting that and also teaching my children at the same time, I went back to do my associate degree in early childhood education because that's the only thing I was a lack of the time. And then I went in the teaching. The things I believe in, I practice those. You know, treating everybody the same regardless of where you came, what color skin you have, and so on. Practice those things is totally different than saying those things. So in a practical world, that's where I think, I know, and now looking backwards, you know, I'm pretty sure my father is very proud of me because I practice every single thing they have taught me to treat everybody the same. I also learn very quickly how the different color of your skin can give you different thinking. because that's what you know or that's what you experience. So my goal in life is treat everybody the same and teach everyone how to treat everybody the same, regardless of, and how you can, put all these practical in a life, in a real life in the classroom.
Thank you for sharing that with us. And we also are proud of you and everyone on the panel. I think that everyone has spoken to the motivation and journey that has taken us to where we are now. And it really speaks to some of our resilience as well. But I firmly believe, and as I say this as a clinician, sometimes our resilience allows us to move forward, but sometimes it affects us through time. Can our panel speak a little about why this matters? So why is it that mental health and healing efforts are important right now? So we have all spoken to some of the inequities that exist in our community. Some of us have spoken to the historical socioeconomic and health disparities. And it is those things that have actually motivated us to move forward. But can you speak a little as to why is it critical that the community healing is done in partnership with students, such as such as Alma, I'm sorry. Why is it important and critical that we enter into partnership with parents and the community as well? Liza, can you address that?
Sure. I just want to say it's important now, but I feel it's always been important, and so important that throughout my 30 years of doing this work, it's been a part of my approach. And so even in the work that we currently do here at Partners for Children, for example, we operate 9 peer-led support groups. And when we designed these groups, back in 2013, we did so with parents at the table, with community-based organization staff at the table, taking all of these perspectives into play to build a program that would be responsive to the needs of the community and support with that healing that we know is so important. But I'm a firm believer in part of the healing needs to be elevating the community residents, the parents, the caregivers into these leadership roles, and really having them take responsibility for pushing things forward. And our support groups are a wonderful illustration of that. So when these relative caregivers and parents run these groups, they do so having gone through 4 months of training to be equipped to facilitate groups and support their peers who have gone through things that they have gone through. They can advise them, support them, cry with them, laugh with them, connect them to resources through our network. It's all about the protective factors. When we designed these groups, we took the 5 protective factors into consideration. So it's a powerful experience, one of healing every time we bring the participants together. But I think the one piece that's so powerful is that it is parent-led and driven. And I think that that is critical when we talk about community healing.
Thank you, Liza. And that leads me to the connection that I want to make with education. Jessica and Alma, can you speak about how the impact that you've seen in your role in working with the Monterey County and in working with Oakland Unified School District?
Yeah, I could start. I think one thing that we have to understand is that there's a lot of generational trauma happening in communities of color. And the pandemic brought another pandemic of mental health and trauma, additional to what it was existing. So what we're seeing a lot of in the families that we serve and students and parents, we're seeing exacerbated stress and depression that is being misconstrued as disconnection from not knowing, hiding it, not having a culture of calling it out, right? And providing that services that are needed, not only from a clinician, but a cultural perspective, understanding the difference of communities. We serve a lot of communities, Oaxaqueñas communities, where their approach is different. The way that you present mental health is not something that you just offer to them. So it's unpacking some of the barriers that exist when providing mental health and cultural relevance services. But the way that we do it is that we train youth and parents to be facilitators of curriculums of connection among community and providing a safe and welcoming space for healing, where they're not only providing the healing aspect, but also the organizing aspect of advocating for these services within their institution. And we have seen the result of their leadership organizing to shifting budgets to reflect healing and mental health as the essential critical part for education excellence.
Thank you so much. Jessica, can you speak to your work around your fellow students around stress and trauma?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that we have been working on, and as I still go to UC Berkeley, I still help out with OUSD in schools, is being able to have that connection between alumni and also in between our own community. One of the things that I believe that Alma did say is, we have a lot of generational trauma that we do have to combat and be able to break down these cycles, but also be able to have these welcoming spaces where students can be able to talk about how they feel and how they want to, what do they want to do with their feelings and what do they want to pursue, instead of, releasing it in a different way. And I think having these spaces open for students is what makes students feel comfortable, and what makes students feel like their school or these spaces are meant for them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. Ms. Kaur, what are your thoughts on why is mental health and healing efforts important right now?
Mental health, as I am getting older, I'm learning the mental health is so important from the age I deal with very young student until the age of 12. I see children when they cannot express, for example, they are going through, they are in a bridge program, for example, and that's another example. They are transitioning from one kind of care to another care. I also see it because my parents work all day. So early in the morning, 5:30, by 5:45, when they drop their child doesn't know what is going on, right? Child just coming to school, for example, and they are not aware of what is behind it. But all these facts, regardless of what is your economical status is, children deal with mental health. I am learning the 2-year-old has a meltdown because those are the 2-year-old when we make the referred for them in the 3 or in the 4s. They, for those little mental breakdown to the services where I see them, gosh, child really need help, our family need help. Who's gonna break the ice? Teachers are doing the best they could to, target those trigger to break the ice with the parents. We all do that. But children's mental health now that during pandemic was totally different. Now the children who are coming this year or came last year, they have so many children need to be in a mental health services. Is just unbelievable because we call them, study call them pandemic children, but they didn't know what was the transition, and it's not their fault. It's just the hurdles they are going through, and we deal with them every single day, trying to get them necessary help they need from the community resources as well as from our in-house services.
Thank you for sharing that. I agree with you. Our kiddos, our young children have gone through high levels of stress. with the pandemic and the effects of a pandemic in a home and in our community. Liza, can you speak a little more to what are some of the supports that have been important for you in your community? And most importantly, what further support would be helpful and are important for us to better understand and address in our communities?
Well, I'll start with our system of care, because I think what, the panel that was right before ours was talking a little bit about this, which was really about partnership and organizations coming together and working, outside of their silos so that we could really look at increasing outcomes for children and families. And that's really what my organization with our system of care is trying to do. How can we better support children and families in some of the most underserved communities so that we can get them the mental health supports that they need, so that we can put them on that road to healing. And so our organization has been able to bring together 41 service providers who get it, right? Who have all said, in addition to doing the work that we do each day, we're going to be a part of this collective impact model so that we can look at increasing outcomes on an even larger scale. So I think we need more of that. And we're doing this, on a community level. What we need to see is, public agencies getting involved in this so that we have more of that community, public-private partnership. I would love to see that as the next leg of impact for us in South LA and beyond.
That would be great. That would be a huge investment and a huge need in our community. Alma, can you speak to that question?
Yes, something that we are working with some of the school districts is connecting them with some of the expertise around cultural relevant practices. So training their internal counselors, mental health psychologists in-house, and parent specialists. And then we're training parents to co-partner to develop and create spaces, healing spaces for students and parents within the schools. It's important not only to include community, but also shift the culture of their institution to be more reflective around healing and form. So it is important that there is some sort of vision and work plan of how this would look like in short-term and long-term vision, but it has to be handled by the institution itself that shift that culture of accountability in support with community and sharing that leverage and accountability together.
Thank you. Ms. Kaur, what are your thoughts on that?
So I am on other end of Miss Lisa's resources. So as we learning and also using these services to full potential to help those children, we have a partnership with the CCRC. They actually did the support the staff when it's come to mental health services. They observe the children, they observe the teacher, they give them clue how to work with them, what can we do, which child is need to be referred. Also the trainings such as trauma cares. Trauma cares training are awesome because everybody learn from them. We are learning that would not only the children who need the service need a trauma care, all of us need a trauma care training because all of us are going through the trauma one way and other. So to have that available for us to provide these services to those children and target their needs very early, that's really helpful to all parties. Parents get benefits, children get benefits, center get benefits, and also the SPD, professional growth for all of us who work in a child care and in educational services industry.
I agree with you. I think there is definitely, there's a greater need for us to do preventative work in our communities, but also engage many of us in securing resources for mental health, so vicarious trauma, and ensuring that everyone is trained around trauma-informed care. Jessica, can you speak a little about the bill that you've been working on to secure funds for mental health resources?
Yeah, so back about 2 years ago, we were able to pass. I worked with a school board director, Amy Ng, who we worked where we worked to be able to have resources and access for our students for mental health, and being able to have. We had multiple conversations with many different organizations, and we had a lot of organizations come and tell us about what they wanted to see in their schools. And in addition with that, we also had students where we had a survey, be able to reach out all our districts, be able to have student feedback. And we were able to secure $14 million, where we're now finding the strategize and being able to implement these resources back into our schools, and being able to have spaces for our schools for our students to have these conversations, in addition to having our students feeling safe in our schools.
Thank you. I think there's been many insights and lessons that we've learned during the pandemic. But I think one important thing is that we cannot do it alone. We need the input from our community, from our colleagues, from our health providers. And I think it's also important in this lesson learned is that we have to do it in different ways, because it's very stigmatizing to seek services. So I think if it's through peers, through storytelling, through systematic changes, or through peer support works, that this is the best way to access all of our community members. Thank you for discussing that lesson learned with us. Let's focus on partnership and infrastructure. Let's see, Alma, what has been your vision for how we can bring opportunities for healing that is led by students, parents, and community? What kind of structures are needed across the state?
Yes, I would love to say that it has to start by shifting mental models of sharing power. We need to be open, and this goes specifically for system folks that are in charge of implementing and operating policies at state, local, and county level, that if we don't change the way we see community as experts, co-partners, and co-designing solutions and implementing, and not just us asking them, we're gonna repeat the same cycle. So we need to interrupt the way we co-design solutions by building infrastructure of co-sharing power. And that could only happen through building trust among each other, because how you said it, this cannot be done by yourselves. So one, it's building an infrastructure of sharing power. And I think community schools is offering us that opportunities through the framework. But the challenge is about the practical aspect and the sustainability of it. So there has to do a lot of unlearning within the systems, and also supporting leadership development for parents and students to be prepared in those roles, not tokenizing folks, right? Sometimes we say, well, they're in those meetings. Yes, but what's their role? Do they have the skills, the training needed to be there? So there has to be a dual investment on the system, on the community, on preparing ourselves, but also building trust and relationship among each other. So every space that is created has to be central relationship building, healing, because also administrators are human beings. And sometimes that is what is blocking us, that they need to come authentically in spaces to show that their humanity exists and that they don't know it all, and be transparent with community on parameters of things that could be done and not, and then work on the things we need to advocate. But I think we have to start first individually about how we perceive each other, especially students and parents in decision-making processes.
Well said. Ms. Kaur, what are your thoughts around additional resources?
Is take the village to raise the child. I 100% trust in that and believe in that. And Ms. Alma said the best. We all have to work together. We have to trust one another. I don't know more than you, you don't know more than me, so therefore we cannot judge anybody. Open relationship and open communication, that's when I think sharing power is going to make a difference. We have to convince everyone that there's nothing wrong when it's come to receiving any help. Right. Mental health is crisis, and we all have to work. As we know, after pandemic, children and families and us need those resources more than ever. So execute only once we start trusting each other and we help each other and build those relationships like it's a non-judgment theories.
Thank you for your thoughts. Liza, can you speak to opportunities for healing, specifically to mitigate some of the toxic stress that we are seeing in our communities?
Sure. Well, first, I just want to say amen to everything Alma said. I think she hit the nail on the head, and I couldn't agree with her more. And if I may, I think to Alma's point, it was part of why Partners for Children took the step to build a parent engagement project, because we really wanted to not just elevate the voices of the community, but to actively engage them in decision-making. And obviously this is more at a local level, but in building a training series that they could go through that would help them with leadership development and understanding how to advocate, having a parent advisory council where they would have decision-making ability, but also involving them in our support groups, right? Where they could themselves be a part of the healing that they also so desperately need. And just all engaging them in going to Sacramento and letting them tell their stories and having their voices, you know, be a part of that change that we need to see at the state level. So I just think that that piece is so critical because, again, as I said before, the community public-private partnership is so important if we want to see any type of systems change in the work that we do. But just to go back to the earlier question, I think specific to the day-to-day work that we do here at PISLA, one thing that's so powerful is, again, our support groups. When we bring in these parents to run these support groups, I think it's amazing how peer-to-peer can create healing in itself. Sometimes we as staff of organizations may be believing we're the experts, we're there to do our due diligence, but sometimes I sit back and I watch these parents in action, and it's just powerful to see these peers support one another. And I've seen some of the biggest impact happen at that level. And so I just really want to encourage, as we do social services, to elevate parents more into those types of roles, because I think we'll see some of the biggest impacts with healing and mental health if we do so.
Thank you, Liza. And Jessica, as a second-year student at the university, how do you see students playing a role with the communities that we've addressed?
I think a lot of students, especially like students who are really close to home, especially students who are first generation students who don't know what they're doing in college. And we want to be able to, you know, like I'm a student who, like, I am very close and connected with my community. So I really come back here. I'm in Oakland helping out high schools and middle schools, and I'm at elementary schools with, you know, just being able to tutor or help out other students, or even just being an advisor or mentor to students. And being able to have those connections and connections with those communities is how we be able to break down those cycles of generational trauma, be able to break down those cycles of being able to have students going to higher education. I have seen a lot of students who did not want to pursue higher education, who have got mentors from UC Berkeley, who now want to pursue higher education, who now want to do bigger things and be able to break their generational cycles of poverty. And I do want to see a lot of more students be able to come back to their communities and be able to give back to their communities. So definitely, as we continue to have these conversations and be able to have students stay connected with their communities, I believe that we'll have more students come back to their communities and also just grow this new powerful generation of future leaders.
Thank you. So I think what we've learned just in this discussion is that we cannot do it alone. Everyone, as students, family, community members, parents, students, need to come together to heal and thrive through some of the toxic stress and trauma that we've experienced. Our aim is always to heal our children and our families and our community, and together we can do this. So we encourage all of you to engage with us, to support us in developing solutions and continuing these efforts to heal our community.